A girl named Rosemary is lying on a tree when a boy named Anthony comes over to smell a flower nearby, and it appears that she has a crush on him. But the flower stains his nose, and another girl named Fiona laughs at him and says he looks like a clown. Rosemary doesn't like this, and she frowns at Fiona. Later that day, when Rosemary gets home, her mom, Ciara, sees her looking sad. She asks Rosemary what happened, and it appears that after Fiona called Anthony a clown, Rosemary insulted Fiona. However, Anthony didn't like this and pushed her down from the tree. Ciara tells her husband, Chris, what happened, and he goes inside to meet his daughter. As he enters, Rosemary tells him she doesn't think she has a purpose. Chris then tells her that she's not just any girl, and he calls her a swan queen. When she asks what it means, Chris tells her that being a swan queen means no one can stop her, and there's nothing she can't do, because the world is her own. This seems to make Rosemary happy, and she goes outside and starts dancing like a swan queen. Many years later, Anthony is now much older, and he's with his dad, Tony. Both men are returning from Chris's funeral, and Anthony laments about opening 2 gates. One of the gates is for Rosemary's family, while the other leads to their own house. As he goes into the rain to open the gates, Tony tells Anthony he could have just left them open instead of going back to close them, but Anthony says Rosemary's family likes the gates to be closed. After they get into the house, Tony complains about how it looks, telling Anthony that his mother would not be happy with it if she was still alive. He also mentions that he doesn't understand why Anthony had to invite Ciara and Rosemary after just seeing them at the funeral. Shortly after, Ciara comes in and starts talking about how her health is worsening. Tony jokes about how old Ciara is, but she says she doesn't really worry much about death, except that she'll have to leave Rosemary too soon after Chris's death. Anthony tries to lift her mood by saying she looks fine and she appreciates it. He then asks about Rosemary, and Ciara says she's outside. Anthony suddenly looks worried because it means that Rosemary is standing outside in the rain. Ciara says Rosemary doesn't like to smoke in front of her, and that's why she's outside. He goes to check her outside and sees how she's standing alone. When Anthony goes back in, Ciara brings up the topic of their farms. She asks Tony if he has signed the farm over to Anthony, who looks surprised by the question. Ciara says the question was always going to come up, especially since Tony is growing older, and his health is also not as good as it once was. She asks again if Tony has decided to give the farm to Anthony, but he says he's undecided. Anthony looks confused by this, as he wonders who else Tony would give the farm to. Tony says he's not like Chris, who he's sure would have had a plan for something like that. Ciara confirms that Chris had a plan, and he handed over their farm to her. She also says she's now working towards handing it over to Rosemary. Tony, however, says he's not ready for his own handover because he doesn't see a clear path of transfer from himself to Anthony. Anthony doesn't understand what this means, but Tony implies that he looks soft and doesn't look like a farmer. Tony goes further to tell him that he doesn't have as much passion for their farm as he should. He complains that Anthony only likes to read magazines. Ciara tells Tony that he's sounding too harsh, but Anthony seems to have heard enough, as he says he does his best for the farm. Tony tries to say sorry, but Anthony says he's going out to see Rosemary. When he gets to where she's standing, Anthony looks concerned about Rosemary standing alone in the rain. She says doesn't mind, and then tells him to go and check on his bull. As they get there together, Anthony says he might have to take the bull to see a vet. Suddenly, Rosemary asks if he has heard from Fiona. Anthony says they've not spoken in a really long time, since Fiona got married and now has kids. When they get back outside, Anthony tells Rosemary that he's sorry for her loss. He explains how he felt when he lost his mother and tells Rosemary he hopes she recovers soon. Just as Rosemary plans to go and get her mom, a man named Cleary comes over to tell Rosemary that her horse has jumped over a fence again. Rosemary thanks Cleary for the information, but Anthony doesn't seem to like him. He tells Rosemary that Cleary only spreads bad news and gossip like he did with her horse. Rosemary tells Anthony that she needs to go and check her horse, so he should help take Ciara home. Inside the house, Ciara tells Tony that he'll be doing the wrong thing by selling the farm and not giving it to Anthony. He says Anthony doesn't take anything seriously, pointing out that he gave Anthony his late mother's ring 3 years ago and he has still not found a wife. She tells him that things only happen at the right time. Tony takes this as an opportunity to ask about the small land between the two gates that Ciara now owns. He says he wants to buy it back so that he can pass down the property just as he was given. Ciara says she can't sell it back because it's for Rosemary. He tells Tony that the real reason Chris bought that land was because it was where Anthony pushed Rosemary from the tree when they were little. Anthony is back inside the house, and he's shocked to hear this, as he doesn't even remember. With that, Ciara asks to be taken home. The next day, when Rosemary takes her horse for a walk, she sees Anthony while he's fishing. He seems to be bothered by something, though, as he keeps talking to himself. As Rosemary calls him, he loses balance and falls into the water, which makes Rosemary laugh. When he comes out of the water, Rosemary asks about what's bothering him, but he says it's nothing. As they then walk together, Anthony asks why her horse keeps jumping over the fence. Rosemary says the horse is restless, and Anthony says he can relate to that. He says sometimes he hears a voice in his head saying the word go. Rosemary asks if he doesn't like it on the farm, and he says he hates it. She then asks why he hasn't left, and Anthony says there are a lot of things holding him back. He, however, advises her that if she gets the chance, she should sell her farm and move to the city, as he thinks the country is not for a decent person. Rosemary doesn't think she's going to leave anytime soon, and she just admires him as he talks, even to the extent that she tells her horse she has still not gotten over her childhood love for Anthony after he leaves. When Anthony gets home, he sees a letter from America that is meant for Tony. Anthony confronts him about it when he returns, but Tony is not prepared to explain the reason why he's receiving the letter. This causes Anthony to get really angry and break the window because he thinks Tony is giving the land away. Tony tells him that if he wants to be taken seriously, then he needs to get a wife. Anthony leaves the house angrily, but happens to go to the farm to practice how to ask Rosemary to marry him. He wants to look really convincing, so he kneels before a donkey and says the words for her to marry him. But Cleary sees this and laughs at Anthony for proposing to a donkey. He also tells Anthony that Tony is planning to sell the land to his nephew from America named Adam. Anthony is angry about his, and while he laments about it, Rosemary sees him as she drives home with Ciara. Anthony tells her what Tony is planning, and she tells him to fight for what is his. Anthony says he doesn't like fighting, but Rosemary says someone needs to do the fighting. As she heads back into her truck, Anthony stops her and thinks of proposing, but he figures out that it's a bad time, so he tells her not to worry. Rosemary gets into the truck and immediately holds back tears as she tells Ciara what Tony is planning. Rosemary thinks selling the land will take Anthony far away from her, and as she doesn't want this, she goes to confront Tony. Tony is shocked by how seriously she takes the issue. He asks if she's in love with Anthony, and when she says it's more than love, Tony says he'll never marry her. Rosemary says she doesn't care, but what is important is that Anthony must be close enough to her. She, however, says she's sure she'll still marry Anthony one day, and if he doesn't ask her early enough, she'll freeze her eggs. Tony thinks she's just wasting her time, but Rosemary thinks otherwise. She soon has to leave, but tells Tony that she'll be back. Elsewhere, Anthony picks up his mother's ring and decides to take the bold step of asking Rosemary to marry him. When he gets to her house, though, he loses the ring and takes it as a sign to go back home. Immediately, he gets back home. Anthony tells Tony he has accepted whatever he decides because he'll never marry. The next day, Rosemary and Ciara meet Tony at the town's pub. They again start questioning his decision to sell the land instead of giving it to Anthony. Ciara even asks Tony what his wife would think if she learned of his decision. Tony says he doesn't want to think about it, but the women don't let it go. Soon after, Rosemary is called to the stage to sing, and the song she chooses is Tony's wife's favorite. As Rosemary sings, Tony fights back tears as he tells Ciara that he's only trying to do what is right. Ciara then advises him that the farm doesn't know right or wrong, and he'd be making a big mistake if he didn't pass it to Anthony. The following day, Anthony goes to the airport to receive Adam and his father, who have arrived to complete the land sale and attend Tony's birthday. Adam doesn't follow Anthony and says he's going to rent a car instead. When he returns, he brings home a very exquisite car that catches the eye of everyone on the birthday. Shortly after, Adam goes to talk to Rosemary, while Anthony is busy using a metal detector to look for his mother's ring that he misplaced. Adam tells Rosemary that he wishes to buy the land in between the gates, but she takes it as a joke. When she sees that he's serious, she tells him it's not for sale. As he seems quite convincing, she tells him she doesn't know whether she'll be selling it or not. He's also surprised to hear that she operates her farm by herself. He tells her that she can move to New York one day, and he would be happy to receive her there. Adam asks her if she'll come with him to see a movie, but she says she only wants to see a ballet performance if she comes to New York. When Adam starts talking about how he heard that Anthony wants to get married to a donkey, Rosemary says it's a lie, before angrily leaving him. Not long after, Ciara's health gets worse, and she is taken to the hospital. Adam and Anthony join Rosemary at the hospital, and there, Tony tells Adam that he's no longer interested in selling the land. Adam tries to convince Tony to sell it, but Tony insists, saying God would fault him if he's the reason why Anthony and Rosemary are apart. Unfortunately, Ciara doesn't make it, leaving Rosemary sad. Days later, Tony's health also starts worsening, and he calls Anthony to apologize. He says he's no longer selling the land, and he's sorry for trying to do so. He also thanks Anthony for always being by his side. He says the land is now for Anthony, and he's sorry for not getting him the part of the land that Chris bought. Tony then narrates the story of how he didn't love Anthony's mother when he got married to her. He says even after they had kids, he still didn't feel anything for her until much later when he heard her sing one day on the farm. On that day, Tony says he was forced to sell the small part of the land at the entrance to Chris so that he could buy his wife a new gold-colored wedding ring. Tony says he knows he will meet her soon because his death is close. He tells Anthony he loves him beyond words, and both men start crying as they hug each other. Before he prepares to sleep, Tony tells Anthony that he's sure that love will find him one day. Tony soon dies, and days later, Anthony goes to see Rosemary in her house. He starts by complaining about her smoking habit before saying he was worried about her, which was why he came. She then tries to get Anthony to confess his love for her, but Anthony still remains shy. Instead, he tells her that she might have to leave the farm to live a better life. Rosemary asks if he truly wants her gone, but he doesn't give her a straightforward answer. As he leaves, she tells him to come by the house more often, and he says he will, though Rosemary knows he didn't mean it. She then starts to think about leaving the country, and after much thought, she travels to New York to see Adam for just a day. Adam is shocked to hear that she's only in New York for a day, and she says she only hired someone to take charge of the farm for just 2 days. Together, they go to watch a ballet performance depicting the White Swan. As Rosemary watches with so much interest, she even starts to cry, and Adam stares at her passionately. After they leave the theater, they proceed to have dinner. There, Adam talks about how much he likes Rosemary. He also tells her that he knows she's waiting for Anthony, who he thinks is not the marrying type. Rosemary doesn't believe this, and she tells him it's been her childhood dream to be with Anthony. Adam then questions whether the dream has made her happy or miserable, but Rosemary remains silent. After they're through with dinner, he walks her back to her hotel. Days later, Adam calls Anthony to ask if he can propose to Rosemary. Anthony says it's not a problem, and Adam says he'll be coming to see her soon. As the call ends, Anthony looks frustrated, and he heads out again with his metal detector to look for the ring. While he's at it, Rosemary decides to do all she can to get Anthony to ask her to marry her. She tells him to follow her to her house, and when he says he's busy, she forces him. Meanwhile, Adam is quick to get on a plane, as he plans to see Rosemary and propose to her as soon as possible. While on the plane, he engages in a very interesting conversation with his seat partner, who is curious about his love for farming when she sees him with a flyer about farming. Rosemary welcomes Anthony into the house, and as he says he has things to do, she insists that he stays. She then offers him a drink as well as a sandwich. Even though he says he doesn't want either, Rosemary makes sure he accepts it. She then tries to find out if he doesn't even like her. Anthony looks nervous around her and says she's too good for him. He then tells her that Adam is already on his way to propose to her, and he needs to go to the airport to receive him. Rosemary says she's not interested, but Anthony says he only wants Adam to take a look at her. Rosemary then starts to push him to tell her how he really feels. She tells him that she had to stop smoking because she thought it was why he hadn't proposed. She soon gets him very jealous when she confesses that she visited Adam in New York. With Anthony now looking vulnerable and scared that he might lose Rosemary, he confesses that he likes her. She then offers to drive him to the airport, but on their way, Rosemary asks several questions about why Anthony never told her he liked her. He says he was scared and mentions that he had tried to propose before, but lost his mother's ring. Rosemary soon connects the dots and realizes that it's why Anthony got a metal detector. She continues to drive recklessly until she hits a tree. Anthony complains about this, but Rosemary says she doesn't care about the car. Rain soon starts falling, and Rosemary shows Anthony that she had actually found his mother's ring just by her fence, and she kept it since then in the hope that he'll marry her one day. Shortly after, Anthony and Rosemary confess their undying love for each other, and as she gives him the ring back, he tells her to keep it because it's now for her as his wife. He then takes her to the top of a hill, and as he tells her that the voice in his head had always told him to go for her, Rosemary's horse starts running around. Both of them laugh about it, and later that day they sing together at the town's pub. Meanwhile, Adam keeps waiting at the airport until his seat partner comes to meet him and offers to let them leave together. Thanks for tuning in. A thumbs up would be amazing because I've got some bills to pay.
Like, ride with me if you ride with me, you can slide with me if you feel like 550 on the 5 sticky, come get high with me, that's a deal, right?